evening and welcome to the June 24th, 2019 meeting of the Shawnee City Council. I would ask that you please silence your electronic devices at this time. I am Mayor Michelle Disler. I will be chairing this meeting. I will do a roll call at this time. Councilmember Zimmerman.
Present.
Councilmember Neighbor.
Present.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Present.
Councilmember Kimling.
Present.
Councilmember Meyer.
Present.
Councilmember Larson-Bonnell.
Present.
Councilmember Sandifer is absent. Councilmember Constance.
Present.
Thank you. We have several scout groups in the audience tonight, so if you'd like to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence, please come forward at this time. Ready. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves and tell us what troop you're with before you sit down.
Good try, guys, but it didn't work.
Turn around and introduce yourselves and tell us what troop you're with.
You go first? Go ahead. All right. I'm Dave Nash, Scoutmaster, Troop 393. Next. I'm
All right, thank you. Thank you. Next, I'll explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I'll offer the opportunity for public input. If you'd like to speak to the council at any of those times, please come forward to the microphone. I'll ask you to state your name and address for the record, then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no person may speak more than twice to any one agenda item. Only comments related to city business are permitted. Comments and remarks that are personal, impertinent, or slanderous are not permitted. Disruptive acts are not permitted. After you are finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. In addition, while we won't do a roll call vote on every vote, I will state council members' names who vote in minority so that our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of the vote. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. A motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is mayor's items. I have one item on tonight's agenda. That is the Shawnee Shine Up recognition. Tonight we're recognizing and celebrating those that took the time to help us make Shawnee shine through a litter, cleanup, or beautification project during the month of May. This year we had 18 groups, 2 individuals, and 1 business, giving a total of 219 hours. To recognize these volunteers, I'll ask members of each group to come up when your group is called, and we'll take a quick photo together. Individual certificates will be given to your group leader. We'll start with Boy Scout Troop 393. Next, we have Boy Scout Troop 451. Scout Pack 3352. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Dandelion and mud puddles for child development. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Girl Scout Troop 214. You doing okay? All right, let's take 2 rows, guys. And then our appreciation officers who participated, who believe were unable to attend this evening. So if you are here, put your hand up so we can recognize you. Boy Scout Troop 34, the Brown family, Bridging the Gap, Poverty family, Soto Teachers Association, Emmanuel Family Church, Foley's Lawn Care Company, Safety Oasis Group, the Montague family, Shawnee Mission Northwest National Honor Society, and the Howland Hero. Okay. Just want to give an extra thank you to our volunteers, and yep, if you go into the hall, they're ready to take pictures. So thank you so much for the time you've given to the city.
Stick around and listen to this.
Okay, the next item is appointments. Consider approving the slate of candidates for the Board of Zoning Appeals, Civil Service Commission, Planning Commission, and the Shawnee Downtown Partnership as presented. As mayor, I'm recommending various new and reappointments. One motion will approve the entire slate as presented unless a council member requests to vote on one separately. This item was tabled from the June 10th, 2019 City Council meeting. New appointments to the Planning Commission will be presented at a later date. The recommended action is to consider approving the slate of candidates as presented. Is there any discussion from the council? Mr. Kimling?
I'd like to remove a name,
Okay.
Mr. Vaught for the Shawnee Downtown Partnership.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from the council?
Mayor.
Okay. Meyer?
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the Planning Commission. Did I understand one of those folks who were originally appointed has withdrawn their nomination? Did both of those individuals, or how did we end up with 2 openings there?
No, at my fault. There were people that had asked about it before, and my understanding was that when the positions came open, we would repost them, and we didn't. So I am at fault for the fact that one in particular asked about it over a year ago, and I believe that they should be able to be considered since it was my fault that it said when they asked me about it, I told them when seats would come open, we would repost it, and we did not because I thought that was what our new process was.
Just one point of clarification, too, on the process. I know in the past we've kind of given deference at least or kind of paid some attention to making sure that we're balanced between representation on the Planning Commission on both the east and west side. Are we still doing that as these open spots come up?
Yes. Okay. Yep. Is there any other discussion from the council? Mr. Neighbor?
No, I would just like, are we going to vote on whether Mr. Vaught is removed or not?
Well, we would vote on the slate unless there's anybody else that wants to be removed from the slate, and then we would vote on Mr. Vaught individually. Just like we do with consent agenda items. Any other discussion from the council? Okay, seeing none. So the recommended action is consider approving the slate with the exception of Mr. Vaught on the Downtown Partnership as presented. I will accept a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Now separately, we will vote on Mr. Vaught for the Shawnee Downtown Partnership. Was there any, Ms. Meyer?
Yeah, just a point of clarification on this as well. The Downtown Partnership actually votes as a group to send forward their reappointments, correct? So they voted to reappoint Mr. Vaught, as it were.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from the council? Seeing none? Oh, sorry. Yes, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas, Troop 214, Des Moines. 13022 West 76th Terrace. I read through the reasons for applying for new people who want to be appointed to a commission, and one is that they say you will be expected to, perform the following duties and be courteous to each other and to members of the public. And at the last council meeting, Councilman Vaught yelled at me from the audience, which I consider to be a disruptive act. On his application, he put his reason for applying is his office is on Neiman and he has a vested interest. And as I said at the last meeting, that I believe he has a conflict of interest. He listed his occupational background as former council member, but he is a commercial and industrial realtor. And I have evidence that he approached people who were had businesses in downtown Shawnee in the past when he was on the council and said, you need to drop your listing to sell your building with a particular real estate agent and go with me because I can get you money from the Downtown Partnership. That's a huge conflict of interest and interest peddling. So I would support not appointing him. I realize that the Downtown Partnership does get to make a nomination, but this is out of line. And he should be disqualified. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins?
Yes, I also want to make a comment. My next door neighbor attended one of our meetings, and during the council meeting, he made some comments about the increase in property taxes at that particular meeting. And following the meeting, Mr. Vaught verbally assaulted my neighbor, dropping F-bombs all over the place right here in these council chambers. I found that to be totally untoward. If somebody would want to have in one of our volunteer groups or one of our serving on any of our councils or commissions, that really was distressing to me, and I found it just totally unacceptable. I could not support his nomination.
Mr. Neighbor?
I go back to what Ms. Myers said. Mr. Vaught, the Downtown Partnership appointed him. Everything else in here is then presented tonight as hearsay.
What hearsay? I was here, James.
It's
was
hearsay
right there
in front of the group, and the Downtown Partnership appointed him. They want him on there. He owns property in downtown Shawnee, and he's served on there before, and I think he would do a good job.
Any other discussion, Mr. Jenkins?
Just one last comment. I want to make sure everybody understands that's not hearsay. I observed this personally in these chambers. It took place right there. Okay, I watched it. And my neighbor was very concerned about it, and that's not the type of relationship we want to have with our citizens. So I'm pretty adamant about it, quite frankly.
Any other discussion from the council, Ms. Larson-Manel?
May I please get a clarification on what our process is for this circumstance? It does seem a little unusual that it's the intent of this process to be a public interview so that the nominees would be here and would have the opportunity to make a statement, or is that something that would happen at some point during this process? It does seem a little unbalanced.
We've never done public interviews before.
There is a state statute that provides that you can't basically not approve an appointment without making a finding that they're unfit for that position. But the governing body, quite a few years ago, I can't remember how many years ago, chartered out of that statute. So the statute was not replaced with any other similar language. So the next time we tried to modify or come up with a policy was when we came up with this policy that you all operate under now. And as far as I know, that this governing body would be the sole determining factor on whether or not the appointments are accepted or not accepted. And I'm not aware of any guidelines that we've adopted. I don't believe we've ever replaced a state statute.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience that wants to comment on this item? State your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76th Terrace. It was not hearsay when he yelled at me at the last meeting. You all heard it. It was completely out of order. And I would encourage the mayor in the future, when there are outbursts like that, to use the gavel. But you are council people too, and you can object. It's unbelievable that you are putting up with shaming and bullying and outbursts from someone, and that is not hearsay, Councilman Neighbor. It's a fact, and you heard it.
I heard it too. No, I didn't.
Well, then listen to the tape.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Second. What?
Whoever wants to make a motion for whichever.
Are we moved, is the motion to approve him or the motion to not approve him?
I just said I would accept a motion. So, Mr. Neighbor.
I move that we accept Mr. Vaught for the position on the Downtown Planning Commission.
Downtown Partnership Council.
Downtown Partnership Council.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes with Councilmember Jenkins and Kimling in dissent. The next item is business from the floor. Is there anyone who has comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Rod Hauk, 12807 West 70th Terrace. I was proud to be a member of the committee that became known as Vote No, There's a Better Way, Shawnee. In the council meeting of June 10th, there were two accusations made by a council member, and those accusations are not true. When I first learned about the plans to finance the construction of the community center by an increase in the mill levy, I voiced a concern to you about the impact of that mill levy increase on the finances of senior citizens living on a fixed income. Another time that I mentioned to you was about the complexity of the community center, and I compared that to those wants to giving my 11-year-old grandson free reign at a large toy store. But the response has always been the same. We have surveys that say that people want a community center, and we're going to put it to a vote. And nothing I could say in speaking to you had any impact on the decision to delay the election or even change your mind. As I discussed the mill levy increase with other residents, a committee was formed called Vote No, There's a Better Way, Shawnee. And it's important to understand that that committee was not against having a community center, but how it was going to be financed. I was very much involved with as the marketing committee. Our goal was always to provide a clear, concise, and complete understanding of that public vote to the citizens of Shawnee. We also drew attention to many of the unmet needs in the city. We delivered that message to residents by putting flyers on their doors, on social media, on our website, and by offering yard signs. All the numerical facts that we presented were the same as published by the city of Shawnee. When we did have the opportunity, now we weren't knocking on doors, but when we did have an opportunity to have a discussion with a resident, they were very happy that someone was looking out for their best interest. In no situation did we exaggerate or lie to provoke a no vote. And I wish Mr. Sandifer was here, because his accusation that we lied about taxes and memberships, as he quoted, to scare the hell out of the people voting no, was simply not true. His other accusation that there was not an organization supporting the yes side of this vote. Well, there was. They had literature, a Facebook page, yard signs, and a public relations firm named Venice Communications working with them. There was a group called Shawnee Community Center Advocacy Campaign. They were a client of Venice Communications. Also, the yes vote had support from the Board of Directors of the Shawnee Chamber of Commerce. Two interesting conclusions came as I looked at social media. One, the first part was how happy the residents are that they chose to live in Shawnee. They appreciate how responsive the city staff is to their concerns, and they're satisfied with the amenities offered by Shawnee. They do not want the noise or congestion of Lenexa or Overland Park. The other conclusion was the increased awareness among newer citizens of the actions of city government and their intent to be more involved and be here watching the actions of the city. In summary, the vote no, there's a better way Shawnee Community was not an anti-community center, but simply against the mill levy increase. Some of our members live in Western Shawnee, so we were not an anti-Western Shawnee group either. So going forward, my hope is that any resentment from the election can be put aside, that we can all go back to making Shawnee a great place to live. Some have asked the meaning of better way. In my mind, it's simply this: empathy for the citizens of all economic status, and having the fiscal responsibility for the management of the people's money. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have comments on an issue not on tonight's agenda? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Tracy Thomas, 13022 West 76 Terrace. I echo Mr. Houck's fabulous comments. If anyone here thinks that the no committee lied, then it's an insult to the people who served on the committee, and it's an insult to the 72% of the voters who turned down your proposal. So that's not the place to look or the way to solve a problem. At the last council committee meeting last Tuesday on June 18th, which was chaired by mayoral candidate Stephanie Myers, I was really appalled that she did not allow public comment at all till after all the items were voted on and the suggestions by Mr. Jenkins were defeated by the council. And it got really unprofessional, Stephanie, and I'm going to quote what you said. Eric, I'm just not going to let you do revisionist history. I don't think it's appropriate or anywhere near accurate to make your statements. And then you said this: you can't come into the meeting and say, I'm not going to be pissed, and say these are just ideas, and then come into the meeting and cry into your beer and then just throw a fit about it. That is unprofessional language. I don't know. I don't think you learned that when you were off in East Timor practicing to be an ambassador. I don't think that's the demeanor of someone who should be leading this city, and you need to allow the citizens to speak. If you want to hear those comments, they're between 1 hour and 30 minutes and 1 hour and 34 minutes on the tape. I noticed that despite the results of the election, that stormwater management the resolution was downgraded to just saying it is a top priority instead of our top priority, which tells me you're not listening to what the voters just told you. I would note in the budget for 2020 that there's still this big push for things that are wants and not needs. $480,000 for Shawnee Town Phase 4, which is almost triple from what we spent on Shawnee Town Phase 4 this year, from $171,000 to $480,000 for that silly house that was built in 1900 that's a free house to be dragged up here that is not going to make Shawnee Town 1929 any better. And I also notice under equipment and facility reserve, which is where you kind of squirrel away money, the reserve money that you can then slide out as needed, that the public park and recreation facility improvements went up 38%, from 416,000 to 575,000. Whereas you notice that for stormwater utility, for contractual services, the things that we say we need, for 2019, $1 million, down nearly 10% to $900,000 for 2020. You know, in that meeting, in that committee meeting last Tuesday, you talked about, Eric had proposed that we maybe take some of the public works contracting work in-house and do it. And you all said, oh, no, we should not be competing with private industry. And it just occurred to me, well, why didn't you think that when it came down to promoting a $54 million community center rec center that competed with 13 local clubs? I would also ask if there's anyone here who is running for open seats. I would love to have them be recognized at each meeting and as we get through the budget and up until the primary, because the public needs to know, are these candidates showing up to hear what's going on in City Hall? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Meyer.
Sure, I would just weigh in. I would thank Mrs. Thomas for her constructive feedback on the meeting. Participation is a good thing. I want to point out again, as I did last week, that our committee actually did accept one of Mr. Jenkins' recommendations and directed our staff to look towards filling the, I believe it would be $5 to $6 million gap in the level 5 repairs for stormwater out of our reserve fund, and also bonding capacity, which I believe almost exceeds or perhaps eclipses the suggestions financially that Eric brought forth. I think it was valuable. I think we had a good conversation last week. I appreciated Councilmember Jenkins putting his ideas forward, and I do not believe that the takeaway is that all of them were rejected. So that was absolutely what I was going to correct on the record. And I would say, if you're interested in comments about crying into anyone's beer, that was a direct response to a verbatim statement from Councilmember Jenkins at the beginning of the meeting. So I would encourage you to listen to the meeting in its entirety.
Thank you. Is there any other comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is public items. Item number 1 is the presentation of the 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR. The city's financial statements and operations for 2018 were audited by Berberic Tran and Company, PA. Stacy Hammond will give a brief presentation. This report is for informational purposes only, and no action is required. Welcome, Stacy. Good evening, everyone. I'm Stacy Hammond with Berberic Trahan, and I'm the partner on the City of Shawnee Financial Statement Audit. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present the results of the annual audit. I believe everyone has received a document that is a report addressed to the City Council. That report summarizes matters that our audit standards require us to present to you about the results of the city's annual financial statement audit. If you'd like to open up that report and follow along, the first thing that I need to talk about is our responsibilities in performing the city's audit. We are responsible for performing the city's audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States, and standards set forth in the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. All of those standards require us to perform procedures in order to obtain reasonable assurance that the city's financial statements are free of material misstatement. Our procedures include examining, on a test basis, evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. We also assess the accounting principles that the city uses and significant estimates made by the city, as well as evaluating the overall financial statement presentation. The most important thing that I'm going to tell you tonight is that as a result of performing all of those procedures, we determine that the city's financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and therefore we issued what we call an unmodified audit opinion, which is the best kind of opinion the city can receive. In the accounting policies and practices section of the report, we would bring to your attention anything we identified related to changes in existing accounting policies, new accounting standards, or any significant or unusual transactions. I'm pleased to report that there's nothing in any of those areas that I'm required to report tonight. Moving on to page 4 of the report, there were several significant accounting estimates that the city has. Those are summarized on page 4, and they relate to the total other post-employment benefits that the city has, the net pension liability that results from the city's participation in CAFRs, and the fair value of the city's investments. Our job as auditors is to look at the process that management of the city has in place to measure and record those accounting estimates and determine if it's a reasonable process. You can see in the conclusion column by each estimate on page 4 that we were able to determine that the city has a reasonable process in place to measure and record its accounting estimates. There were several audit adjustments that we made as a result of our audit. Those are summarized at the very end of the report. Please note that these entries were, for the most part, prepared by the client and given to us during the audit. Most of the entries are reclassing entries that are made just for the audit due to limitations in the city's current financial accounting reporting software. We also had to record estimates related to activity like debt and capital assets. Those are items that currently aren't on the city's financial reporting software due to its limitations, but are required to be reported on the entity-wide statement of net position and statement of activities. The city provides us with those entity-wide entries in order to present the report in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and GFOA standards. The final sections of the report on pages 2 and 3 would be where we would let you know if anything really bad had happened during the audit, if we'd had any disagreements with management, significant consultations, or any significant difficulties in performing our audit. There are no matters in any of those areas that we're required to report. I'm pleased to let you know that the management of the city was extremely transparent and cooperative in answering the many questions that we had throughout the audit process. I would also like to point out that we did not have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls as a result of our audit. If we had, those would be discussed in those final sections of the report on pages 2 and 3 as well. We have attached, after page 4 of the report to the City Council, a letter that has a bunch of numbered items. It's 7 or 8 pages long. We call that management's representation letter. That letter is the final step in the audit process, and it puts into writing matters that our audit standards require that the city represent to us during the audit. When management of the city signs that letter and gives it back to us, that's the signal that the audit's ready to be finalized. We like the City Council to be able to see and read that letter. We think that it helps you to fulfill your fiduciary responsibilities in knowing what management of the city represented to us. In conclusion, I would like to thank Maureen Rogers and her staff, especially Debbie Kelly and Shelley Oldham, for all their hard work in preparing for the audit this year. They spent a lot of time getting ready for us to come and do the audit and, in the wrap-up stages as well. Their hard work and professionalism, really made it a pleasure for us to work on this audit. At this point, I would like to open it up to any questions that anyone might have about the audit process or the final results.
Any questions or comments from the council? The report is always beautifully done, so thank you, and thank you to staff for giving them the information they need to make it so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2 is to consider establishing the budget limit and setting a public hearing for the 2019 amended budget and the 2020 budget. Kansas statute requires the city to set a public hearing for the 2019 amended budget and the 2020 budget. The public hearing will be held on Monday, July 8th, 2019 at 7 p.m. There are 2 recommended actions. The first recommended action is to consider approving the notice and setting the public hearing, amending the 2019 budget for July 8th, 2019 at 7 p.m. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item?
I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommendation is to consider approving the notice and setting a public hearing for the 2020 budget for July 8th, 2019 at 7 p.m. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider ordinance number 3282, authorizing the issuance of federally taxable private activity revenue bonds, IRBs, in the principal amount not to exceed $6 million for the Fairfield Inn and Suites Hotel project. Resolution number 1850, adopted on December 10th, 2018, expressed the intent of the city to issue IRBs to finance the acquisition and construction of the project at 16550 Midland Drive. Property acquired with proceeds will be exempted from ad valorem taxes for 10 years. An ordinance is required. The recommended action is to consider passing ordinance number 3282. Is there any discussion from the council? Ms. Constance.
So I was able to tour the hotel last Friday, and I did see progress, so I found that encouraging. However, I still am receiving quite a few complaints from Ward 4 residents about the site being not clean, the fact that there is plastic water bottles, plastic trash all over, so much so that the daycare that is directly to the east of it, the students talk about the fact that there are ghosts in the trees, and those ghosts are the big pieces of plastic that have blown from the construction site. Last Friday, I did speak with them about making sure that is cleaned up. I was assured that it would be. Today I drove by and I saw just as much trash outside as I saw on Friday. So what I'd like to know today is, how are we going to resolve this? What's the plan in place? Do we have our representative here to talk about it? Because it's got to be cleaned up. When we have rains like we did last weekend, that trash ends up in my neighborhood, it ends up in other neighborhoods, it ends up in people's backyards. And we just had volunteers here who work hard cleaning up our city, shining it up. They just got recognition for that. And so I'm just really frustrated because it's something that I've brought forth, in speaking with the hotel, and I haven't seen much improvement. So I want to know how we're going to solve that.
Mr. Patel, would you like to come forward?
Dilip Patel, 10401 France Family Drive, Kansas City. Yes, I did talk to you, and we are working already. It's been assigned to the subcontractor. It'll be done within this week. We are focusing right now to getting all the inspections and everything, but there's not many. We're ignoring outside. We are talking maximum, any nuisance you'll be even fined. We'll be talking a couple more weeks max altogether, even for future, because all be done regardless. Because interior, exterior, we're talking about parking lot and all be cleaned out. So regardless, but as far as what you see on a neighbor or whatever, we'll take care of it in a day or two. Because it's been pouring rain, been mud. That's for the reason been delayed a little. But we have been working nonstop. Even right now, people's working over there as we're speaking.
And I definitely saw lots of folks working inside and outside on the project. I'm merely talking about picking up the plastic Gatorade bottles so that they don't end up in our neighbor's yard.
Definitely. I'll make sure I'll put somebody right away to pick up all that.
Thank you.
Tomorrow even.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Thank you. Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Don Lysett. I live at 6850 Bell Road in Shawnee, and as the crow flies, a quarter mile away from this particular property. Council member discussed one of my concerns, but I'm looking at a little bigger picture here. This project has been going on for 3+ years. As part of this project, there's supposed to be a retail center, and it was presented at the time, it was presented to you all, there'd be a restaurant there. My question is, why are we giving, now it'll be $12 million away when the developer is not doing what he said he was going to do? He seems to be getting all of the benefit without necessarily the negative side or downside. I think if you do this, and I'm quite sure you're going to do this, it needs to be contingent upon the rest of the project being completed. And there's not a word about that in the report that you all received. So I would strongly encourage you, I know you put a deadline of, I think it's August 31st, for him to do this. I've been in touch with various staff members, council members over the last year, sort of following the progress, because quite frankly, there wasn't any progress here until just, let's say March. And we were told then, yeah, it's going to be done in April. It's going to be done in May. We're now in June. So I don't know. I think somebody needs to really keep an eye on this thing. I'm not saying don't build them, don't let them build it. It's a foregone conclusion. That's happening. That being said, where's the retail element, and why isn't that being plugged into this equation in some fashion? To go to some of the points raised by Councilmember Constance, I have for 8 months now complained specifically in the southeast corner of that property. There's a bunch of orange construction safety fencing. There is some kind of a sign, a barricade sign, that was at the end of the sidewalk when they poured that. It has not been moved in 8 months. It's part of the trash problem we're talking about. I drove by today, and I'd noticed this before, I hadn't really thought about it. There are 7 dead trees, bushes on the property, at least you can see from the road. I think under your ordinance, the developer is required to replace anything that dies within 2 years. And I may be mistaken there. My point being, it's ugly. It's infrequently mowed. It did get mowed here about 2 weeks ago. But the field area, it's ugly. In the field area, and that's what I'm calling the retail area, there's piles of cement, curbing, junk, just sitting there. Why can't they clean that out? If they're not going to build it, the retail, seed it, make it look halfway decent. And just another thing, and this is a minor thing, sort of a maintenance thing, but I think it's exemplative of what's going on there. There's been when you drive into the existing facility, there's a sign that directs you. Someone hit it with a truck, car, whatever. Months ago, it's been there, it's bent. This is right on the corner of rather significant intersection in this city. I don't think it's the image we want to present. And it sure as heck is not the image I like to drive by almost daily. These are small things in the scheme of things, but my concern is it underscores the owner's either reluctance or inattention to doing these things. So I'd like each of those things noted in the record, but I'd really like you all to stop and think about, well, why are we doing this if the retail's not going to be part of this parcel at this time? I mean, this is 3+ years in the offing. He certainly had a chance to get that up and running, get his financing. I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience like to speak to this item? Please come forward.
As far as the orange fence goes or the sign goes, it's not we put it on over there. It's been done by telephone company. I'll make sure we remove it tomorrow, but we did not put it over the number 1 on southeast corner. Number 2, the lot that's vacant for retail center is being cleaned out. Only curb or the concrete was put up last week. That site has been cleaned. City's been inspected over there. We cleaned the whole site, back lot and front lot, and city's been there 3 times, inspected themselves. The curb and things, we broke it because the ADA compliance deal just last week. That's what just piled up. It's not going to be there when we're ready to open the Fairfield, no matter that, one is container sitting lot, no matter front lot. both will be cleaned out with seeded. That's been part of the condition city has them. Now, as far as why we're not tying down the hotel with the shopping center, that's not what been done because we did improve the street big time with a personal dime, with the storm drainage, with a personal dime. All that been done, plus 2 hotels, creating economy over there. Yes, we do have intent to do the shopping center, not like we don't. But as far as our citizens has a concern about why we're not tying down, why we're giving the money away. But they are not considering, I did, as an owner, did improve those areas with dollar that I spent it from my pocket. It was not city dollar. Plus, I have to warranty the maintain of the road. As for the date trees or something like that, I don't want to leave them like that myself. So the date trees is only few or whatever we added on. That's not even necessary to done upfront. I did it when we opened Comfort Inn. We still going to change them. It's not like we don't. Even landscaping, when we open the property at Comfort or when we going to open Fairfield, what I submit to city or what the city requirement, we going to went beyond requirement. Somebody be more than happy to, I can walk them through, look at the plan. If I submitted 50 plant or 50 bushes, I probably put 80 bushes. If I put 10 trees, I put 20 trees. So I did not compromise, neither am I compromise, but it does take time when you're developing and when you have some issues, you have to clean them out at the end of the project, and we're going to do it. Retail goes, it's not like we are saying we're not going to do it. But does that retail has any bearing with this? Not realistically. I do have people inquiry about the lot, doing a better development too. So it's not like the lot can be sitting forever. It's a premier lot. Do I want to look to premier hotel? Looks bad by having the dirty lot in front? Not at all. Neither Marriott want to do that, neither Choice want to do that. So that's not the case forever. Yes, we have some construction stuff over there right now, but it's a temporary. EB going to get cleaned out, and it's going to stay clean. Because hotel has to be run, and hotel has a lot more value than the retail strip center or the keeping dirty lot. So we're not going to let that down as far as city concern, because as a hotel owner, I have a lot of liabilities comparing to when somebody want to drive through and look it over, a nuisance over there, I have liabilities. That's on my dime, on my head. So it's not going to stay like that, neither, and like I said, the lot front been clean completely. And city did visit it, except we just put last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 4 is to consider ordinance number 3283, authorizing the issuance of federally taxable private activity revenue bonds, IRBs, in the principal amount not to exceed $10 million for the Airtex Inc. Building Number 4 project. Resolution number 1842, adopted on July 9, 2018, expressed the intent of the city to issue IRBs to finance the acquisition and construction of Building Number 4 in the Westlink Business Center at 43rd and Powell Street. Property acquired with proceeds will be exempted from ad valorem taxes for 10 years. An ordinance is required. Recommended action is consider passing ordinance number 3283. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is from the Planning Commission meeting of May 20th, 2019. Item number 1 is to consider ordinance number 3284Z041905, rezoning from agricultural to planned industrial for the project Homeland Office Warehouse Development located in the 24300 to 24500 block of West 43rd Street. Planning Commission recommended 8-0 that the governing body approve the rezoning subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and ordinance is required. Recommended actions consider passing ordinance number 3284. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is staff items. Item number 1 is to consider approving the final plans authorizing staff to bid the King Street Improvement Project 59th Terrace to 60th Street 2019 CDBG project number 3479. Projects on the city's capital improvement program Recommended action is consider approving final plans, authorizing staff to bid the project. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is to consider approving the final plans, authorizing staff to bid the Renner Road under Shawnee Mission Parkway Storm Drainage Improvements Project number 3459. Project is on the city's capital improvement program. Recommended action is consider approving final plans, authorizing staff to bid the project. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 3 is to consider preliminary plans and easement acquisition of private property for the Seven Hills Lake Storm Drainage Improvements Project number 3461. On January 28, 2019, the governing body awarded a design contract to Walter P. Moore and Associates. It now requires preliminary plan approval and authorization to continue with the design of final plans and acquisition of easements. There are 3 recommendations. First recommendation is consider approving the preliminary plans and authorizing Walter P. Moore and Associates to continue with the design of final plans. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Second recommended action is to consider authorizing staff to acquire easements on the Seven Hills Lake Storm Drainage Improvements, initially by extending easement acquisition compensation offers based on the tiered schedule. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Third recommended action is to consider authorizing staff to acquire easements still outstanding as of July 19, 2019 by condemnation. This will require additional governing body action on July 22, 2019. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 4 is to consider bids and award contract number 2019-051 for the Public Works Service Center Vehicle and Equipment Shelter number 3, project number 3419. In 2016, 3 shelters were designed and final plans approved. Budget constraints only allowed 2 shelters to be constructed. The 3rd shelter was included in the current budget and 3 bids were received. Staff is recommending Combs Construction LLC in the amount of $146,000. Recommended action is to consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 5 is to consider bids and award contract number 2019-052 for the Quivira Drive and Park Street Area Storm Drainage Improvements Project number 3466. Final plans were approved on April 8, 2019, and 4 bids were received. Staff is recommending awarding the bid to Kissick Construction Company, Inc. in the amount of $1,672,839.81. Recommended action is consider approving and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 6 is to consider adopting resolution number 1880, extending a moratorium related to the operation or establishment of new vape shops. On March 26, 2018, the governing body approved a moratorium on the operation of vape or inhaling shops through the 2018 calendar year until such time as new regulations could be considered. On November 13, 2018, the governing body adopted resolution number 1847, extending the moratorium through June 30, 2019. A new resolution is required to extend the current moratorium through June 30, 2020. Recommended action is consider adopting resolution number 1880. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion has been made, seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items. Item number 1 is to ratify the semi-monthly claim for June 24th, 2019 in the amount of $1,957,591.75. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item is miscellaneous council items. Does anyone on the council have an item they would like to discuss?
I have one.
Mr. Zimmerman.
So there's certainly been just a whole bunch of narrative lately regarding our Parks and Rec department, and I'd really like to kind of get this behind us. I've had a little entertainment this past couple of weeks doing some research on the significance of amenities, parks and recreation to a community, and I came across some very educational articles I just want to share with everybody. And I'll make this quick. One is from the American Enterprise Institute. They're a conservative think tank. This came across my news feed on May 2019. Interestingly, the day of the vote on our community center. Title of it was The Importance of Place, Neighborhood, Amenities as a Source of Social Connection and Trust. And it's summarized by saying having access to parks, coffee shops, and other neighborhood amenities is associated with an incredible array of positive social outcomes. They increase our sense of satisfaction about our neighborhood, they boost our interest in local events, and they generate greater feelings of interpersonal trust and make us feel less alone. And then I found an article by the Knight Foundation. It was their third annual report on the soul of the community. It's 43,000 respondents from around the country. And the study provides empirical evidence that the emotional bonds between people and their community are consistent in every city and can be reduced to just a few categories. Interestingly, the usual suspects, jobs, economy, and safety, are not among the top drivers. Rather, people consistently give higher ratings for elements that relate directly to their daily quality of life. An area is physical beauty, like its parks, opportunities for socializing, and a community's openness to all people. Remarkably, the study also showed that communities with the highest levels of attachment had the highest rates of gross domestic product growth. When residents enjoy their community's offerings, they are more likely to spend their money on local activities and businesses directly benefiting the local economy. And that's important for Shawnee. So I want to talk about Shawnee's Park and Rec just for a minute. This is a little magazine that we all are very familiar with. There's like 76 pages in here of all the different things that Kansas City has to offer. And it's the entire metropolitan area from Olathe to Gladstone. There's over 1,000 entries in here. Only 12 of them are Shawnee. Only 12. If there's more, I missed them, but you get the idea. Of the 12, 2 of them are restaurants. The other 10 are related to our Parks and Rec group. They've assisted, they're sort of, not only do they help our maintain our incredible collection of public parks, but they're the handyman for our police department, our fire department, our public works. They're there to lend a hand whenever needed. 2019, they had oversight over 39 events. They average 3 a month. That's the average. November, December, January, things are a little bit slow, but I think, Neil, you got a pretty busy June, July, and August ahead of you based on what I see here. There's incredible things that they've been a part of. The daddy-daughter dance. My father of 3 daughters, I remember that extremely well. The St. Patrick's Day Parade, Old Shawnee Days in Old Shawnee Town. The Corporate Challenger soccer event, Wheels and Dreams car, which is now in Shawnee Town. This goes on and on and on. And then we have Shawnee Town 1929. All by itself, it accounts for 40 events. And that doesn't even begin to account the weekly parade of private events that are held on the grounds of Old Shawnee Town throughout the year. I meet there every Friday morning with the Rotary Club, for example. Shawnee Town 1929 is, I believe, unique to Shawnee. It's unique to Johnson County. And I think it's one of the very few authentic and interactive historical educational experiences within 200 miles of Kansas City. And I'm really excited to see Doc Sullivan's house come to Old Shawnee Town. Folks, our Parks and Rec group is a gem. and we're blessed that it is staffed by the incredible people. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Councilman Zimmerman, I'd like to add to that. So every meeting I have, my monthly coffees, my quarterly Q&As, every one of them, what we do as an icebreaker is we open every meeting and we have everybody introduce themselves and tell me something they love about Shawnee. And the biggest response I receive every single time is parks and trails. And every time, every meeting for almost 5 years, that's the response I received every time. And so I think that says a lot. And I also always appreciate the historical aspect that we've been able to maintain, because he knows how much I love my history. So when you go to Garrett Park and it's, the Garrett home is still standing there and the Garrett family can still go there, the ancestors, and see the home and see the shelter that, he created to look like the barn. And that I love bragging that the flowers at Erfurt Park are from Erfurt, Germany, and things like that. And so, not only is it the number one thing that comes up at every meeting I hold, I just love the fact that we keep our history incorporated into it. And even when not our history, like with Listowel and West Flanders, our sister city relationship. So when people go to these parks, they're learning either about our history or they're learning about our sister cities or they're learning something. So it's not, just a pretty place to have fun and enjoy. There's actually a learning element to it. But that is the number one response I receive at every single meeting when I ask people, tell me something you love about Shawnee.
I hear it all the time too.
Any other, Ms. Larson-Bonell?
Very briefly adding on, very soon after I was appointed to the council, I had a neighbor constituent come to me and say, hey, Lisa, I just read this really great book, and I think that you as a council member would be interested in it. It was called Palaces for the People, and I am so sorry, but the author's name is escaping me. The whole point of the book was to quantify the benefit that social spaces, including parks and the things that are managed by our Parks Department, bring to our communities. The sociologists refer to these places as social infrastructure, and they talk about how the social infrastructure, when done right, actually leads to increased life expectancy. This is huge, huge benefits. Everything that Matt said was reiterated in this book. I think it's a wonderful read for anybody that is interested in this, and it certainly has colored my perspective on our Parks Department and the importance of that in our community.
Any other council items? Seeing none, if there's no other items, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to comment on one of the council items? Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Carol Mundy. I live at 6040 Ballantyne here in Shawnee, and I agree with you, Matt, and I wanted you to know that Dr. Sullivan's house that he actually built in 1930 is right next door to mine and will be on the market in another few days. The people that live in it are relatives, and it has been lived in by relatives since it was built. Probably wouldn't cost near so much to move it, but I really don't want it moved. Probably doesn't quite have the same pizzazz as the old one. The other thing that, since I was absolutely flabbergasted by the amount of money it was going to take to move that house, I talked to, is it Mr. Ullman? Anyway, that guy, about what that all meant. And he said it was only $95,000 to move the house, and the rest of the money was going to be to redo plumbing and water and stuff for old Shawnee Town. So I thought I'd throw that out. Apparently that wasn't heard by very many people, me included. I guess I was asleep when he said it. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any remarks? Okay, seeing none, I will accept a motion to adjourn. A motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.